My name is Mark Hansen. As Paula said, I lead the Brown Institute for Media Innovation. I teach in the Columbia School of Journalism. The institute I lead was created by this woman, Helen Gurley Brown, who was editor of Cosmo for 35 years in honor of her husband, who was a movie producer producing Jaws and Driving Miss Daisy, which means that Steven Spielberg is on my board, which is an extremely strange thing. And the institute that they created, or she created, is half at Stanford Engineering and half at Columbia Journalism. It's about mingling technology and story in novel ways. So I lead this institute at Columbia. I also teach at Columbia. Oh, this is a bit on the Brown Institute. By the way, we're having a book signing tomorrow night. If you want to come. And this is our happy space. Any of you want to come down to Columbia, the J School, we're more than welcome to host you. Just don't scratch the floors because I am my mother's son. At the J School, I teach classes like this, and I apologize in advance. My slides tend to have lots and lots of words on them. It's just the kind of thing that I do. The class is called Journalistic Computing. I co-teach with Beth Morrissey, who's the lead researcher at Vice. Beth, you're in the audience somewhere. There she is. She's so awesome. She's an actual journalist. I should have said I'm a statistician by training, and what we're trying to do with this class are to bring the ideas of data and computing science to journalism. Our students have done things like worked with sensors. They've analyzed hundreds of hours worth of transcripts from Twitch TV. They've created, one of them created a new social register that was based on, I have to turn on my timer here, otherwise you're never getting out of here. That was based on not looking at who one's related to any longer, but instead the kinds of boards you serve on and the kinds of philanthropic donations that you make. So our students are sort of steeped in data. And in fact, the Brown Institute has hosted the Computation in Journalism Symposium in 2014, which is a gathering of journalists and sort of data science and computing scientists together to help merge these two fields. The journalism school itself has a brand new specialization in data, or data journalism technically. We offer a dual degree in journalism and computer science. And we even offer an introductory program that is intended for those students who have had no experience in data training whatsoever to get them to a place where they can be sort of dangerous and make some noise. And you might ask yourself, why would a school of journalism be doing this? Why would a school of journalism take it on themselves to start training their journalists in data, code, and algorithm? And the answer is, well, first of all, just the prevalence of data. As Hillary noted, there's so much data out there now that's being made public. Organizations are increasingly equating transparency with data release. And so our journalists need to, in some sense, be able to catch what these organizations are pitching, whether it's the state or the city, and to understand what that data release means and how to ask questions about it. Have they produced the data in a series of PDFs that are basically inert, or have they produced them in a kind of API that lets them interact with them? Are the data they're releasing sort of service delivery, meaning they're about bus schedules, or is it about transparency, like campaign finance information? Increasingly, data, code, and algorithm are changing systems of power in our world, and journalists, as explainers of last resort, have to be able to interrogate those systems. What we're teaching when we're teaching journalists about data and about data science and computing science is not just, well, we're teaching them a kind of literacy. And it's not just literacy like functional literacy, like how does the thing work, which is important, but we add two other concepts to it. We also include critical literacy. Can you imagine this some other way? Why does it look the way it does? Why does it function the way it does, right? To be able to really interrogate and ask questions of Hannah, to be able to ask questions of technology. We also bring up the notion of rhetorical literacy, the idea that any piece of digital technology is the product of active deliberation, but maybe more to the point, also acts as a kind of argument on its own. This is something shamelessly cribbed from me in Bogos, but every piece of digital technology, data, code, algorithm, embeds within it a model of the world and acts aggressively as an argument for that model. An example of that simply, if you've gone to Google and you've typed something and you haven't gotten the results that you've expected, your first result isn't, oh, bad Google. Your first result is, oh, I must have done something wrong. And in that moment, Google has trained you to behave like Google wants you to behave, right? And so it's aggressively acting in favor of that argument. And again, these are things that we want journalists to be able to uncover and to talk about. We also borrow quite liberally from other disciplines, right? That's the kind of beauty of journalism, that we're not tied to the ways in which statistics, and I have to say my doctorate's in statistics, and statistics still don't lie. People lie. So we borrow, for example, from epidemiology, where James Trossel reminds us that every time you look at a piece of data, there's a bit of social exchange going on. Whether you're interviewing someone and someone's giving something to you, or back and forth, or you're even just accessing the database that's been assembled based on their interviews, you are engaged in some kind of social exchange. Or borrowing from the humanities. This is from Joanna Drucker in a beautiful article in the Digital Humanities Quarterly, where she contrasts data, which means what is given, with capta, which means what is actively taken. And by changing data to capta, we change the knowledge that's constructed, taken, not as simply given or as a natural representation of some pre-existing fact, but that it's taken, and that we are complicit in how this sort of how knowledge is being created. And we go across the whole pipeline starting from the classic Bowker and Starr about what it means to create classification systems, what it means, that first step of turning the world into bits, that first step that statistics and computer science is so quiet about, unless it's like thought about in terms of experimental design, and then the world is thought about as a kind of giant machine that has 3 knobs with 3 settings. Oh, could I really only have 2 minutes left? That's not possible. Or this least recent blog post by Jacob Harris looking at sort of the poetics of the back end and the schema that you apply and what that allows you to do or not do, to the very front end, like sort of moving along a pipeline from how data are created all the way down to how data are analyzed. We're seeing increasingly in journalism the notion of algorithmic accountability, holding those algorithms like Twitter's sort of top 10 trending topics, or Google's suggestion queries, holding them accountable in some way. How are those functioning? How are those working? Do those embed biases or what have you that we need to start to ask questions of? So in some sense then, data and data technologies have new social relevance. Almost every aspect of our lives can be rendered in data. The data tell us stories about who we are and how we live, but as products of human attention, innovation, and memory, their perspective is not neutral, and the stories they tell are often incomplete, open-ended, and biased. So data can either reinforce or challenge systems of power, and so in a very real sense, our democracy depends on the public being able to think critically about these technologies, telling good stories from bad. As truth tellers, sense makers, and the explainers of last resort, as my dear Emily Bell tells me, journalists need to understand the working of data in society and the ways in which data code and algorithms function. And from a pedagogical perspective, we use journalism as a kind of integrator for real-world problems and more technical perspectives. The practice of journalism fills a gap between lived experience and data, its analysis, and its visualization. It fills a gap in a way that I hadn't appreciated. I have TikTok. Okay. All right. So, but I want to say that this is somehow not something new, right? So in some sense, you could say, oh, this is a new thing, and Paula sort of went back to sort of the big data of the 1790s, and you could actually go back to the 1660s with the bills of mortality and the birth of epidemiology and demography and the very first hypothesis test. But we have to go back that far. 1904, Joseph Pulitzer, in his article, The College of Journalism, where he tried to establish, the journalism school at Columbia, goes through a very long sequence about what should we be teaching journalists, what should we be presenting for them. And one of the things he says is statistics. And I love this passage, and I've read you already, so I'm going to read to you again. He says, everybody says that statistics should be taught, but how? Statistics are not simply figures. It's said that nothing lies like figures except facts. If you want statistics to tell you the truth, You can find the truth there if you know how to get at it. And romance, human interest, humor, and fascinating revelations as well. The journalist must know how to find all these things, the truth, of course, first. But think about that. That within data, Pulitzer is thinking you find romance, human interest, humor, fascinating revelation. I mean, this is 1904, right? So 1904, Gossett, who published under Student, who gave us the t-test, had just gone to the Guinness Brewing Company. R.A. Fisher was 1 minute. R.A. Fisher was probably like 5 years old. Statistics really wasn't what statistics was at that point, right? And here is Pulitzer saying, think about the kind of amazing things that you can pull from data. It's sort of awesome. By the way, in the same journal, the North American Review, 3 years later is where we have Mark Twain's autobiography, and he's the one who famously said there are 3 kinds of lies, damn lies, and statistics. But again, statistics don't lie, people lie. So what I was going to finish with, but I will not, I will just summarize, is to tell you that to give you, I hope I've given you the sense that journalism is having its kind of data science or its data and computation moment, right? Every field, this moment is going to come to every field across the academy, right? It came for geography, it came for design, it's coming for the arts, it's coming for the humanities. Every discipline on campus is feeling its core, the core artifacts of its study being digitized, and hence open to a kind of data practice. And so you have to figure out what you're going to do in that moment, right? Do you embrace the technology, and do you embrace what's coming at you, or how do you assert your values and your ethics, right? And that's sort of the place where journalism is now. And what I was going to use as an example, but will not, is to simply look at a story like this from ProPublica, and look at the components of it. It has an interactive graphic, it has a map. Well, this is all about high schools. That's my high school. It seems irrelevant now. And then it has, this is an algorithmically written story, but you can look at the components of the story. You can look at the map, the data visualization, even the typography, and perhaps the fact that this particular article was published on the same day as a number of other articles, which now you've sort of crossed over 4 disciplines: geography, design, typography, and the digital humanities. You could look at those 4 and say, how are they handling their transition to computation? Because journalism is somehow combining all of those to make a single story. How are they handling it, right? Design, awesome. All the designers code. Jonathan can tell you, we all code. GIS, really rocky. That was a fight, and I'm sure it hasn't even landed yet. The humanities is kind of in a wobbly place. And typography, well, they've been tool makers forever and have embraced sort of digital methods since there was a screen. So I think that there's something, this goes very much back to what Hillary was saying about, and these are all the slides you didn't see, but now you get to see them in 2 seconds. All right. So, whatever. So all this is to say that, data science started as a job title, and it's evolving into an academic discipline. But the term is heavily bound to specific tools, and scientists don't often define themselves based on tool sets. So astronomers don't say, we're astronomers because we work with telescopes. So there has to be something more, right? And so in the university, data science represents a tremendous opportunity to break down disciplinary boundaries, meaning all these disciplines are having to deal with data. So we, as the computeniks on the crowd, should go to those disciplines humbly and respectfully and talk to them about their practices, the way they imagine data, the way they think through data, and integrating all that. That should be the science of data. We have much to learn, and I will shut up now. Thank you.
Yay!